Yes, the last year hug of 2021, and it is an honour to have Dave Royle with us as our last rock star. So Dave has extensive international experience in exploration for precious and base metals with major multinational resource companies, and more recently with junior explorers spanning 47 years. So his exploration teams have had a track record for the discovery of several significant mineral deposits in Australia, South America, and Southwest Pacific through regional grassroots exploration. So today he's going to be sharing stories of successful discoveries. He's dug up a heap of old photos, maps, and all sorts of info from some amazing discoveries by some Australian geologists. So it is going to be an awesome session. Please use the chat. We'll have the chance to jump off mute. We've also got some trivia and some prize giveaways at the end. So get comfy and let's have a bit of fun. So thank you so much, Dave, for joining. It's wonderful having you.
Okay, well, Jess, thank you so much for having me today. And thanks for the GeoHug talk series. They've been very, very interesting. This is a bit of a ramble. It's not like one of the usual very technical discussions, but I'm going to try and, well, before I start, I want to just acknowledge some people that have helped me assemble some of this stuff. Brian Levitt on the stuff I'm going to be talking about in Indonesia, Doug Kerwin just on things general, and Roger Langmead on the Tolukuma Discovery in New Guinea. So when Jess, you asked me to do this, I thought I'd just try and go back through my exploration story myself and pull out a couple of interesting ones that I've been intimately involved with. And I thought it would be interesting too, because I want to showcase a number of things that sort of show the really interesting job that we geologists do, getting to meet really interesting people and fascinating cultures in parts of the world that we are really blessed that we get the opportunity to go see, and someone's actually paying us to go and do it. So we baby boomers have been through a really interesting golden era for discovery, basically from the late 1960s to the late 1990s. And in that period, it was the emergence of mineral deposits, models, things like porphyry copper golds, IOCGs, epithermal systems, and so forth, that helped us and go to various places. And indeed, you know, we went to four corners of the world, and that showed a bit of signs of encouragement. And then there was a burst of discoveries that resulted from that. So what I'm going to do today is give you two stories: Batu Hijau in Indonesia, Tolukuma in Papua New Guinea. And both of those stories are highlighted in a recent publication. In fact, this time last year, we had the first publication of the Australian Mineral Discoverers, which is available incidentally through the Royal Society of Tasmania. We had 1,000 books that were printed in the first round. They were sold out within 2 months. We've now got another print run of 250. I understand about 50 of those have already been sold. So if you're interested, go to the website for the Royal Society of Tasmania and you can get a book there. The interesting thing, the stories of 65 life's achievements of Australian mineral explorers and educators who have advanced the science of discovery and contributed to the wealth of this country. It was about 2 years in the making, and there's some absolute classic stories there. So I would recommend you have a look at that. So let's go and have a look at the first of these discoveries in the moss rainforests of Papua New Guinea. Tolukuma it's the gold silver mines located about 100 k's north of Port Moresby. It's located in the central province in very mountainous country. It's a sparsely populated area. There are a couple of missions, Fane Mission on one side and Waitape on the other. The people there are called Ulai, and the whole operation here from exploration through to mining has been done by helicopter support, which is pretty amazing. I think it's one of the few in the world like that. So the discovery itself was made in '86, and it was after the, it came after looking at the whole of New Guinea for epithermal gold, and shown here on the left-hand side is actually Roger Langmead, the main project geologist, and one of the Ulai chiefs, and they're looking at actually what is the discovery outcrop that was taken in 1986. Roger basically, he was interested in this area for a couple of reasons. It came after the discovery of Lahir, and he saw up there and by the way, this area it was one of the few areas in PNG where there was actually no mapping, but he got some information from the PNG survey and saw that there was a volcanic complex or caldera up in Mount Cameron itself, right sort of intermediate volcanic rocks. There was a little bit of gold that had been reported from the Alga River, and that was the way that he homed in on this area. The idea was that to cover the area, the best way to do it was with stream sediment sampling. So that started in July, I think, of '85. The work was carried out in blitz programs where small teams with helicopter support went in a military-like planning and execution of the program. That program produced a rather low first anomaly of only 5.32 ppb, which is very low. And we had a lot of trouble getting landing sites to go into places like that, really precipitous slopes, numerous waterfalls and that sort of thing. So that really hindered the follow-up process. But anyway, persistence paid off, and then walking up some of the creeks on the southern side of where that anomaly was, Jim Cran, who is one of our geos, he went up one of those creeks and then started to see some beautiful coliform banded quartz veining. He didn't actually find the source, but some of the results that came back were pretty impressive, between 10 and 100 ppb or grams per tonne gold. So clearly there was something pretty interesting up in the hills. This photo here on the left-hand side is a vegetation anomaly, and that actually was the thing that drew us into having a look at that hill. And we used, believe it or not, crowbars. Once we thought we thought there might be a vein, we literally went along until we heard a clunk, and then we peeled off the moss cover, and lo and behold, underneath there was the vein, and that was how we located the vein. And that was about a year after that program had started. By the end of '86, Costaining had indicated semi-continuous gold mineralisation along a vein at surface, about a K length. Subsequent diamond drilling the next year in '87 indicated that the high-grade gold that we were getting in the trenches at surface continued to depth, with a dozen holes showing ore-grade mineralisation. If you actually have this is all pre-digital, so these are old sepias we would have put on a light table. But you can see the first hole that was drilled got 10.5 metres of 17.3 grams per tonne of gold, which was pretty damn impressive. Then hole 4 there, 9 metres of 29 grams. So you can imagine the excitement when these results are coming out. It was back in the days when you got that tippet. The results came out of I forget what they call it now, the funny machine that we all hang around watching the results come out, and that was a pretty exciting time for us. Tolukuma mineralisation is contained within 10 to 20 kilometre wide graben shown here, with their Pliocene age, sort of about 4.5 million year old rocks, intermediate to basic volcanics. And the graben's bordered by Cretaceous metasediments, they're shown there in the blue. And interesting enough, just north of Tolukuma is what looks like a caldera structure seen on satellite images. More recently, geological mapping's actually found a diatreme breccia just to the south of Tolukuma Hill, which gives you the suggestion that there could well be a high-level porphyry system underneath here. The pre-existing structures acted as the host for all fluids. By the end of '87, we'd identified 10 separate gold-bearing veins shown there in red. Tolukuma had just been one of them. Tolukuma vein itself and the 120 vein are the only ones that have actually been exploited to date. The other ones, not so much. The vein itself contains the largest delineated resource that was defined by Newmont, which is about 1.4 million tonnes of 19 grams per tonne gold. And there was additional resources that came out of that 120 vein, about 1 million tonnes of 10 grams. And the gold occurs in subvertical veins. They're hosted in those volcanic rocks I mentioned before. And the veins align on a northwest trending zone, and they're probably the result of strike-slip movement along the marginal driving faults, strike-slip movement, which have opened up the structures, their sort of dilation zones. Like a lot of the epithermal Clowner deposits, the thing that was really interesting about Tolukuma, they had this super high grade zone in the centre there, or chute, if you like. It's probably an upflow zone, and that red zone there is better than 100 grams per metre, which is very, very high grade. And you can see how laterally it's then moved out from there. But the grades were extremely high grade, and that's why it was high grade enough to mine using helicopters. These are some really interesting rocks of the typical ores. They show the beautiful coliform banding, pseudomorphs after platycalcite, and bonanza dendritic gold, which is this one shown here. And that rock itself was going kilos to the tonne, just to give you an idea of the grade, ridiculously high grade. The minor accessory minerals were things like adularia, albite and illite, and rare base metal sulfides. The deposits could be classified as a volcanic hosted low sulfidation quartz adularia type. Looking at community relations, it's a really big issue in places like PNG and pretty well anywhere you go these days. But one of the great problems was dealing with that particular issue. And during all phases of exploration, up until mining, a great amount of attention was given to this. Even when we were trying to work out who actually owned various parts of this area, it was just the most complicated issue, because everything that they have there is in their memory, and so they talk about stories about who owns what, and it's passed down from generation to generation. And we literally had to get them to sit down and talk through those stories to find out who owned which bits of it for compensation reasons. The Royle people were, had a very primitive agricultural subsistence lifestyle. So you can imagine with a high-tech industry activity like ours, it was very difficult and painful for them. But anyway, they managed to do what we had to do. Mining was initially open cut and then it went underground. That rough terrain up there, which is considerable, didn't allow any roads or airstrips to be put in. The closest airstrip's at Farnham Mission, which is about 4 k's away, and it's one of those ski type ones which you can only land STOL aircraft on, and so it wasn't suitable for bringing in a lot of construction materials. So it was all done by helicopter, and during construction they used one of those Russian, the biggest helicopter in the world, a Russian Mil-26 was used quite successfully. So this Tolukuma discovery was really interesting. It could be described as a discovery on a shoestring. When Newmont sold the project to Dome Resources in '83 for $16 million, they covered all of their costs for the exploration pre-feasibility study. That in terms of ounces, or dollars per ounce, it was less than $5 per ounce if you did, which is amazing. The mine itself, over about a 22-year period, produced just a bit under a million ounces and 2.5 million ounces of silver. So not a big deposit, but it has actually, believe it or not, been quite profitable. So let's move from PNG. We'll go now to Indonesia, and let's have a look at the Batu Hijau discovery. It's in the Sunda band of volcanic arc. In some ways, it's a very similar story to Tolukuma, sharing similar features such as direct outcome of drainage, geochemical sampling, and it was undertaken at about the same time using the same company. That was Newmont. So this is where Batu Hijau is here on Sumbawa. Newmont was attracted to this area. Actually, the original idea was to looking for different styles of epithermal mineralisation, so high-level epithermal. They were particularly interested in looking for large bulk tonnage sort of targets, being a big company. That was their idea, and they took out a contract of work over the 2 islands of Lombok and Sumbawa. Shown here, it was about 1.2 million hectares, so a very, very big area. So in order to cover a big area like that, the thought was that they'd apply a similar sort of process to Tolukuma. So they used stream sediment geochemistry to cover those 2 islands, and over 900 sites were sampled over about a 10-month period starting in '87. And several small sampling teams were used. You can see them there crossing the river and so forth. And it was always done in a blitz type effort where several teams were brought in and they'd hit it hard for a couple of weeks and then pull out. Samples involved, as well as BLEG sampling, -80 mesh pan concentrates, as well as picking up any alteration or interesting looking float, which was routinely sampled. They were analysed for gold, base metal sulfides and pathfinders as a routine. Some of the conditions, of that plus 900 sites, I think there were 36 geochem anomalies that were generated. These are gold anomalies shown in red there. Batu Hijau was one of them, located there on the western end of Sumbawa, and it was ranked number 6 for follow-up. Note that you can see Elang. It was another project that was actually found before Tolukuma. It was a bulk tonnage gold target, but it turned out they did a bit of drilling on it in '89, I believe, and got sub-economic results. So it wasn't all that attractive at that particular point. So the challenges of working in places like this, not dissimilar to New Guinea, were pretty extreme. There were poor access, so everything had to be done on foot, often involving very wet and difficult conditions. So being physically fit was one of the prerequisites doing a program like this. Dilution from stream sediments was another issue, with thick epiclastic volcanic conglomerates covering the southwest coast of Sumbawa. And so things like minus 80 mesh, there was no response at all, very low BLEG values and that sort of thing. Also, that initial follow-up did actually find quartz veins and skarn type mineralisation, and which could well explain some of the anomalies. So at that point, everyone was still thinking it's all about the epithermal side of things. Some of the veins actually turned out to be the peripheral manifestations, if you like, of Batu Hijau porphyry system that was subsequently found. So here we've got you're shown in this illustration here are the BLEG samples going upstream in Sejurang drainage. The initial one was a 7.4 ppb, pretty low number. That was followed up. Further up that creek, a little bit of copper stained diorite was found. There were some copper anomalies, and the BLEG numbers, as you can see there, started to get bigger and bigger, up to a boomer of 196. There was a geologist called Bob Burke, who was the guy that was given the task of following up that drainage. And when he got up there, he just stumbled across the most amazing natural wonder, green, blue, copper carbonate stained series of waterfalls shown in this illustration here. I had the pleasure of seeing it too. It was just unbelievable. And on further examination, he noted a little bit further up that creek that there was quartz pyrite stockwork veining copper stain. And you can see the samples shown there. These were the first samples that were taken out of that outcrop. There was also chalcopyrite and bornite, secondary biotite, I should say, identified in the outcrops. And so the prospect was named Batu Hijau, which is Indonesian for green rock. How I got involved, I didn't have anything to do with the discovery of this deposit, but by chance, I was visiting Indonesia at the time in May of 89. And this is several weeks after Bob in fact discovered those outcrops. And I went up to Messel, looking at the Messel deposit on Sulawesi, and John Dow, who was the exploration manager, said, "Dave, I think they've found something down there, and they're calling this thing Batu Hijau. Would you like to go down and have a look at it?" Because he knew I'd worked on porphyries before. So I went down to have a look. This photo here is actually the first chopper pad that was cut on the top of the hill, and it shows Brian Levitt, who's the project geologist and the guy who led the discovery team, and he's got on his left there Saya Fruden and Bang Bong, and on the other side there were the two Indonesian geologists that were important in that discovery. This is well before any drilling was carried out, by the way. So I spent several days up there, and the first thing that was really obvious was the alteration anomaly that you can see on that photo. I took this photo from the helicopter, and you can see the veg anomaly here. And when we got down on the ground and started looking at it, I did the first geological and alteration map, and that's one of the products right there. And it showed that the mineral system was very pronounced, had the classic concentrically zoned sulfide hydrothermal alteration that was centered on a high-level tonalite porphyry. And while there'd been some retrograde overprint of sericite, the core was actually, you could actually still see it, potassic alteration passing outward to green rock propylitic alteration. note on that illustration there, sorry, on the photo, these are advanced argillic ledges on either side of that potassic zone. So it had the full range of things that one would expect to find in these island arc systems. The surface extent of mineralisation was outlined by, I think it was the next year, 1990, by alteration mapping and ridge and spur, auger, bedrock, geochem, as well as a series of costines. You can see there both the copper and the gold soil geochem that beautifully outlines the Batu Hijau porphyry copper deposit. Diamond drilling commenced in 91, and there was about 11,000 metres drilled, 22 holes, which clearly defined the ore body. Batu Hijau is a classic calc-alkaline island arc porphyry copper gold system, similar to others in the region, like Grasberg, and it has very similar features. Mineralisation and the alteration and quartz veining is all centred on a multiple near vertical tonalite porphyry intrusion, just a series of intrusions cutting up through the andesitic volcanic sequence. What the UMOC geologists did, they identified that there were, based on contact age relationships, three main porphyry types. The oldest tonalite shown on the top there was had the highest quartz vein density, strongest alteration, and grades of better than 1% copper and greater than 1 gram per tonne gold. So pretty high grade stuff. The largest volume of copper was actually in what they call the intermediate tonalite. There, the grades of copper are a little bit lower, 0.6 to 0.8%. And then the young tonalite, which comes up and cuts all of those other intrusive rocks, has the lowest grade of less than 0.3% copper and half a gram gold. So the mineralisation is centred around those porphyry intrusions, multiple intrusions, and the overall geometry really looks like an inverted ice cream cone, if you like. You can see on the left-hand side, these are the copper numbers in the grade shells, and on the other side is the gold. Almost coincident relationship of the two. That high grade mineralisation is associated with A and B type veins, and also bornite chalcopyrite as the main sulfide minerals. There's classic zoning of the sulfides in this system. You go from a bornite sort of core, which has the highest grade gold. It goes out to chalcopyrite bornite, chalcopyrite pyrite, and right out into a pyrite halo on the flanks of the system. So just looking at the significance and status of this thing, Batu Hijau, it's actually bigger than the resources shown here, but at the commencement of mining, it was 914 million tonnes of 0.53% copper and 0.4 gram per tonne gold. And it got up and running from exploration to startup of 10 years, which is pretty good going given where it was and the challenges that they had. It's still in production. It's been sold from UMOC back to the Indonesian government, who are continuing to operate the mine. And when it was in UMOC's hand, it was the lowest cost asset that they had in the world. So it was a very valuable asset for them. If we now look at concluding what made these, what we understand about these two discoveries, they were both found by UMOC. They were both found pretty well in the same time, 1980 to the 1990s. Both deposits were found in frontier regions and not known to contain the type of deposit that was discovered. The take-homes don't be constrained by deposit models. The interesting thing was for me anyway, that in the Batu Hijau case, the Sunda Banda Arc was not considered prospective for porphyries. And that was a view held by and supported by some porphyry experts, but they were proven to be wrong, of course. Area selection was conceptual, initially, as I said before, targeting epithermal gold in both cases. Drainage geochem using the BLEG technique and a blitz approach led to the discoveries of both of those two deposits. The discoveries were not top ranked, and here's a really important point, and emphasises you really need to be very systematic and persistent following up anomalies. Both were exposed discoveries, something that's very hard to do these days, I might add. The follow-up required smart prospecting, geological thought and rigour. And finally, the bedrock geochemistry and alteration mapping really defined the drill targets in both cases. So I'd like to just conclude, or I've got two more slides to go here, but what are the ingredients of exploration success? And I borrowed this from Brian Levitt, a lot of this, but he was thinking that it's a bit like fishing. You really need to know what you want to catch. You require the knowledge to choose the right location. You need to try unfished waters. You require the right skills and the right techniques. You require patience and persistence. You need to make your own luck. You might catch something you don't expect. This was a feature that Roy Woodall used to talk about, serendipity. He was a great believer in that, but you need to be in the right spot to get that luck. You need to know what to keep and what to throw back. And you need to be grounded and ready for failure, because that's mostly what we get. We might have some successes from time to time, but mostly we have failures. So not every rainbow has a pot of gold. I just want to talk about some other aspects, if you like. This was from talking with Doug Kerwin. It takes a team effort to make a discovery. And of the 159 discoveries covered in the book I mentioned before, the Australian Mineral Discoverers, only one can be ascribed to one person, and that was Henry Evans, who discovered the Weipa bauxite deposit. Every discovery that I'm aware of has been through a team effort. The ingredients are getting the right mix of people with the ability, education, experience and determination involved in all aspects of exploration. It really goes from the outcrop to the boardroom. So the whole thing is a team effort. In many cases, the exploration team that focus on the right rocks has the full range of skills, collects and observes critical samples, differentiates the value of selected data sets and techniques, and provides novel interpretation which produces the discoveries. Something else which I think is really important is management support. They need to trust the exploration team to get on with the job and try and limit the bureaucracy and the micromanagement that can go on these days with all sorts of things that are required that we didn't have back in our time. So strong management support is absolutely fundamental. And on several occasions, when I've been involved in my teams with some success, it was done actually when we had no allocated budget. For example, Tolukuma, there was no funding. A couple of things I was involved in South America, we didn't have any funding, but the support of people like Ken Phillips, Arnold Offenberg and Courtney Chamberlain were absolutely critical in all of those successes, and they were the guys at the top that just gave us all of the freedom to get on and get the job done. So that is the end of that. And I thank you, and guess I'll take any questions.
This has been incredible. Thank you so much, Dave. It's yeah, there were some wonderful stories. I can't thank you enough for coming on.